Welcome to Detonation Point. I'm your host, Matt O'Neill. I was with the U.S. Secret Service for 25 years and retired as the Deputy Special Agent in charge of the Cyber Operations part of the Criminal Investigative Division. In Detonation Point, I'm going inside the fight against cybercrime, hearing directly from defenders in government, infrastructure, and enterprise who are racing to stay ahead, because cybercrime isn't slowing down, and neither can we. Welcome to Detonation Point, presented by Elastio. Welcome back, everybody, to Detonation Point, presented by Elastio. This week, we have Rivka Tadjer. Rivka spent 20 years as a business and tech journalist covering privacy, security, identity theft, data mining, artificial intelligence, and supply chains, focusing on the sociological implications of technology, how our behavior is changing in a TikTok and dark web culture. Rivka, thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
So I was listening to another podcast that you were on, and you mentioned that you were, I think, at the Wall Street Journal during the OJ era. And
Called them the OJ years. So
the OJ years, yes.
We put the Wall Street Journal online. I was part of the team that put it online, which was a big deal at the time because the Wall Street Journal decided to charge while everyone else was putting things on for free. So yes.
Yes. Yeah, that's an interesting time for me because I was just graduating from college and really spending half my time online and looking for actually sports scores is what I was spending a lot of time on because I was really enjoyed, well, I would say gambling in college. So it was just, I think Wall Street, there was like 3 or 4. And then my first job out of college was at ESPN. And so that kind of like took it full circle. So I spent 3 to 5 years in the sort of journalist world myself, and then switched over to law enforcement, and then got interested in the same kind of stuff you're interested in. From your time as a journalist to now as being an advocate for protection of people's personal information online, how did that transition happen for you?
So, a lot of AI today is still machine learning. And aside from the Wall Street Journal, I worked for all the tech publications at the time, owned by Ziff, IDG, and CMD. So this was an era where data mining and banking in particular was going online, and I was very, very interested. It's like if I were alive at the turn of the last century, I would have wanted to cover the Industrial Revolution. So to me, the techno revolution, the sociological implications of technology, how our behavior was changing, became fascinating to me. And I remember writing something for Fox News. It was Fox on Technology. At the time, I remember that there was a couple who were in their 20s and they had only met like in the version of a chat room back then. And he moved from San Francisco to move in with her in New York, and they had never met. But they'd spent all these hours. And, the big folk tale love story at the time was Bill Gates and Melinda Gates used to stay on their cell phones and go to movies in different cities together. So that's the era we're talking about. So from there, I spent many years, especially in terms of businesses, B2B businesses, of course, Wall Street Journal, and then business to consumer. And then I went into fintech, and I was the chief of staff for the CEO of Heartland Payment Systems when he sold it to Global Payment Systems, and helped set up a new company that was nonprofit based to try and create a model where private enterprise could help fund nonprofit. So this is payment systems. So then I just got deeply interested in fintech, in how payments are settled. And when you know that entire chain and you can actually follow the money trail, you start to become very interested in how crime happens. And that's what I help people protect, are their financial assets. And I eventually became the point of contact for the National Infrastructure Advisory Council for Critical Infrastructure at the White House, for the Cybersecurity Working Group with Robert Carr, and so representing the banking industry, and then became obsessed with cyber threat intel systems. So I went on to work with Cyber Team 6 and Exalton Group. These are threat intelligence uses with certified fraud examiners, and using all of them from, Shadow Dragon to CSIS, Team Cumry, Cyber Intel Matrix, Hack Notice, and really becoming interested in what it means to have actively trafficked data out there, and what it means and where the tipping point is where you can be impersonated and you really need to take action. And whenever I talk to doctors, get this best, because a cyber threat intel investigation to your PII, which is personally identifiable information, is like the blood test of cybercrime. You go to a doctor. Imagine if you never had a physical, he takes blood. He's like, doesn't look so good. We need a deeper panel, right? So people aren't used to visualizing how cybercrime happens. And as law enforcement, 0.05 of 1% are ever caught because crime pays. And these aren't people who have to reveal themselves to steal. So I started focusing more and more. I was on the advisory board for the Global Resilience Federation after that, trying to protect schools in their K-12 ISAC, and started my consultancy in 2015 while these other things were going on. And then right before COVID really went full force to protect individuals, families, and small businesses, because, the huge enterprises and the monoliths in our society, they're fine. Right. But some of the biggest breaches like AT&T, Juniper Networks will tell you that happened by attacks of the C-level. It came in through the people. It comes in through impersonation, through things you have heard like phishing, which works. That's why people keep doing it. It doesn't cost much to do it. So my mission became to protect individuals from actively trafficked data and teach them how to create a new persona that's not out there. Because if the toothpaste is out of the tube out there, you can't stuff it back in. But you also can't put your head in the sand and say, well, everybody has breach data, because you're going to get hit. And it is so painful. I have to tell you, I do both prevention and incident response. And when people have $750,000, their life savings funneled out of a brokerage account, it's heartbreaking to help people like that. And a little prevention goes a long way. That old adage is true.
Yeah, prevention's a lot easier than incident response, that's for sure. Just out of curiosity, when you were at Heartland, was that when they got breached? And if so, did that have any influence on you as well?
I was there years after. So I came to work with the CEO after that. And he was very bold and really did the right things when that happened with his merchants. But at the time, it was the biggest credit card heist ever. And it was from someone in jail who had been on his system for a year. And he was really security conscious. He happened to be an investor in a startup that I was involved in Boston for secure payments, where I hold a co-patent for secure payments for universities and sports stadiums, to your ESPN world.
Yeah.
And then we got to know each other. So I was there just at the tail end when he was already selling Heartland and thinking about his next journey. But that really taught a lot. And, the FBI has their own agenda, right? When they know on an enterprise that there are criminals there, they're not going to necessarily tell the company, because their priority is to study the criminal. To study the criminal activity, and, the insurance of the business takes care of themselves. So this is a very important point when you bring it down to the individual and who we are as individuals, because, we're armed with these things, and our mobile entry point, our remote control of life, since Steve Jobs handed all of these in 2008. And this mobile entry point, all the former InfoSec and IT infrastructure in the world, no IT guy can help when that person walks off the job, and they have their personal stuff and they have their business stuff on the same phone. The old days where we had corporate credit cards and a BlackBerry, everyone wasn't on home Wi-Fi, right? Remember those days? And there's like, we'll never have our personal iPhones in the workplace. Well, they were right. But now, I help a lot of people who get breached who come from very big companies, and they're like, work is taking care of it. I was like, really? Because your phone, are they paying for that? No, I'm on my family plan. All right, well, so this is not a brick. And the minute you go from your Wi-Fi and you're sharing it with your gaming teenage son or daughter, now you're open. So it's the network traffic that really is our vulnerability. And one of the things that I really believe in is teaching people how to understand that, how cyber criminals are watching, and how to protect it. Like, you've got to protect this phone.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. It's probably the most vulnerable thing that you have as an individual. When you're talking about early on, and like how law enforcement reacts to data breaches and stuff like that, one of the things that we used to do is we at the Secret Service took a different approach, where one time we identified a command and control server that had 800 victim merchants, and we called every single one of them, because at the end of the day, for us, the notion of allowing somebody to continue to remain victimized is not an acceptable outcome. But the problem is that we're a pretty small agency, and to your point about 0.05% of cyber criminals getting caught makes it really difficult when they're located in places like Russia or in the Golden Triangle of Southeast Asia and things like that don't really cooperate with law enforcement. But you've also seen in your career an evolution of what we'll call the dark web. And first of all, if you're talking to somebody that doesn't really know much about this business, can you kind of explain what the dark web is and how that's the dark web, the deep web, the Tor onion router, like, so therefore listeners can kind of have an idea of what that even means? Because I think a lot of people don't really know.
I sit down with people. This is what I say the dark web is. Imagine a mall for bad people. And each mall has a store. You can buy anything you want there. You can buy people, you can buy COVID, you can buy guns, you can buy a lot of things. And imagine you as an individual. You've been in vintage shops, right? Imagine you as an individual. Every individual has their own little vintage shop. Everywhere I've lived, my social security number maybe is out there, like everything about me, because it's organized crime. You have to understand this. Okay, this isn't the iconic 40-year-old man in his bathrobe still living at home, in the basement,
Right.
trying to log in like in, the Robert Redford movie like Sneakers. And now I'm really dating myself. It is organized crime. They have great hackers. These are supercomputers running algorithms against weakness. And so everybody has their own vintage shop. And if I come across a radar or become particularly vulnerable, you can go in and there's trading, like on a stock exchange floor for my data. And if somebody can get these 4 points, which is my social security number, the ability to not look like they're in Russia, but geolocate to my office here via my IP address, because that's a key thing to talk your way into a bank account or take out a pre-approved credit card or loan where a credit card report isn't pulled, so freezing doesn't help. If they can impersonate me as an admin of my email, and if they can forward authorization codes from my phone to another phone, which if I have my IP address, I can go online, get a little piece of software and configure caller ID over VoIP, and we're off to the races. That's how spoofing works. That's how you get that. But it looked like it came from my bank text, but it wasn't. So if you get those elements and you're at high risk for impersonation, then what happens in this dark web mall is trading happens. They go buy your data and then they walk over to the bank teller or your credit card issuer or your Verizon or AT&T or T-Mobile account, which is awesome to break into because if I can get to your SIM and impersonate you using your phone, or go to accounts.apple.com and hijack your Apple ID. All of these stores are in this mall, right? I can take your data and go and impersonate and shop on your credit cards and get into your banks and open accounts in your name. And that's the danger. So you need to make sure that your assets like your credit cards and your Apple ID and your Verizon or AT&T or T-Mobile account and all of that have credentials that aren't available in your personal vintage store or in junkyards. Just like in gangster movies, they kill the guy and they throw the body in the junkyard and they go offshore for a little while. There are junkyards in the dark web. Like when there's a ransomware attack on a hospital, right? I was called in for one of those and, they're like, well, no, they just wanted to shut down. I was like, really? Because in 6 weeks to 12 weeks, you're going to have to send one of those breach letters because they're laying low. It's like the, mafia guys lay low and go overseas and let that data lay low. Behind the mall for bad people, there's also junkyards. And if you visualize this and where they interact, you get a much better idea. And the other problem is that geopolitically, Russians and Chinese and Ukrainians and Iranians might not like each other, but as criminals, they are BFFs all around, right? And very interestingly, because the Secret Service is a great organization, and when I was at Cyber Team 6, we helped install CryptoVoyant at the Secret Service, which is an amazing tool to go and trace. It leaves behavioral footprints of crypto, because one of the major funnels out, how do they steal your money out? If they wire, banks aren't legally liable for wire fraud in the United States or all over the world. They're going to go set up some sort of fund in your name in crypto. They're going to sell it. They're going to immediately go offshore out of Binance's jurisdiction. And if it's Caribbean now, maybe you can negotiate. If it's India, they just started doing extradition because they have the worst cybercrime in the world right now. Well, some of it aside from the US. But if they go on a Turkish or Iranian exchange, then they can change it back into fiat currency in a Swiss bank account and it's gone. So this is also like that mall for bad people. And sorry for this extended metaphor, but that mall for bad people has that back door, and that back door is crypto, because they have to launder the money they're taking. right? And they have to get it out of the United States because otherwise the Secret Service is an amazing organization, as is the FBI, right? And they'll get you. But they're not bound by any kind of borders, and that's the problem.
So how much do you think the huge uptick in reported financial crime to the IC3, so it was like $1.4 billion in 2017. Last year it was like 16 billion, something like that. How much do you attribute that to crypto?
Well, crypto has the role of the best money laundering and fraud tool there is. So IC3 has two divisions, personal phishing campaigns, credential stuffing, the stealing of personal money. The poor FBI, they're fielding 2,300 calls a day. So there's that crypto where I funnel it out of your bank account, following your rules, impersonating you, logging onto your secure portal at a brokerage and going through the things to wire out, according to normal behaviors. Then they're going to send it to crypto and send it overseas. That's one kind of thing. The other thing is terrorist activity. And this is, of course, what the Secret Service was interested in. They go across thousands of wallets at a time, and they flow through these to gather money. This was the same tool that caught the Ronin heist months and months before the FBI found it, right? Which was a big heist that started as a scam on LinkedIn, which was a job offer because people are looking for jobs and they give all kinds of personal information out on LinkedIn forums. They worked their way, they created crypto wallets, or they used the crypto wallets of the people that they found and funneled money. I've had clients refer to me and said, Rivka, something was really weird. Like this morning, there was an extra 20 grand in my crypto account. And then I was going to do something and well, maybe it went up and then it was gone again the next day. That's terrorist flow through, right?
Right.
And they do that in little increments until they have 240 million or whatever the heck they need, right? In North Korea or Iran or any of the usual suspects. So there are two elements. And I think the FBI is caught at IC3 in both. And the FBI took down a very important gateway, in Russia, which is one of these gateway ports that can go take your Gmail if they heist it. And then they just route it there and just are copying things, the IP2 ones, but they're very difficult to get a hold of. So I think that there are two areas, and the area that you can have control over stopping is your personal area. You can put lockdowns on it. Don't get bullied by AI and what people say it's nonsense. And the number one way to protect yourself is a secure, encrypted email address. You cannot have AOL or Yahoo or Gmail guarding your bank and brokerage.
Right. And so tell people how to get an encrypted email account.
Okay. So, and it's very important because I think that Google is making strides. But if I, for example, go through that proxy server I was just talking about, that gateway, and I can get in and make myself an admin of your Google account, you will not get that alert from Google that said there was unusual activity on your account. There was an attempted login because Google thinks it's you. Okay. And that's the sophistication of hackers. So free email cannot afford to give you military level encryption. So the one I like particularly for people that are Gmail users, because you can forward your Gmail into them and it works the same way, is Proton Mail. And the joke about Proton Mails is certain 3-letter agencies in this country, if you had a Russian last name, used a Proton Mail used to go on a list, right? But now it's so popular. It's not for the bad guys. It's encrypted. It's secure. It has a dark web monitor. You won't get spam in there. It acts like a big air filter to muck. And, I've had people who, have had their Apple ID hijacked the email in their Apple ID because they, joined a French club and they went to restaurants to speak French and Yelp gets breached or DoorDash gets breached. And if you have a Proton Mail, it won't show all your credentials. It'll show private relay and then this encrypted code. That's the only thing that you want guarding your bank account. It's the best $3.99 a month you will ever spend. And this idea of free email being worthy of our assets is just nonsense now. It's nonsense. And you have to do your citizen duty. And by the way, I don't take any affiliate marketing. I take no money, never a cent. I get no marketing money or anything from any vendor I recommend. I only recommend them because I think they're good and because our threat intel system shows that they don't have leaks on their servers, right? And Proton Mail happens to be based in Europe with servers in Switzerland and Germany, probably started to protect Swiss bank accounts. So that's what you want. right? And it also teaches you every email that you receive, there's a little purple shield and you can click and it'll show you how many trackers it blocked, how many links it cleaned. And if it's a malicious link that you get from someone, you won't be able to click on it. So it sort of saves us from that never ending, oh my God, I can't click on a link. Oh my God, now it's even worse. I can't even open up an email because that could be malware. So it actually helps you behaviorally not be a victim. So I'm a huge fan of it. There also, you can Google PC Magazine's top 10 secure encrypted emails. A lot of them are good. Some are better for different purposes, like for small business work groups, like a realtor's office versus an individual. But I find, because I set people up with these things, that Gmail users, and I work with a lot of seniors because the senior scams really upset me. And they're all targets because once you're 59 and a half, all those guardrails come off your retirement accounts. It's very easy to steal them and get seniors involved in pushing the wrong button. It's very easy to transition from Gmail to Proton Mail.
So going back to ransomware, we mentioned earlier, and you see a lot of victims of ransomware attacks say, well, either there's no evidence that the bad actors released any of the data. They might have exfilled, but we don't really know exactly what they took, but we paid the ransom, so therefore you're safe. What is your response to something like that?
And I just want you to know, everybody out there, Secret Service kept a straight face saying we paid the ransom. You never pay the ransom. So in that mall for bad people, there's a little stock exchange trading floor. And they're like, he paid a ransom. You just went up in value down there on the dark web. Anytime you get hit, anytime you pay off, your data becomes worth more. Your vintage store just became vogue. It's like being an influencer. My frocks, as my daughter would say, you know, it's like buying celebrity ice cream on eBay. Like people will buy anything and you just went up in value. You have no idea who you're paying. You have no idea what amount of value you're creating for yourself and what is stolen when you do it. So when you respond, a ransomware attack, okay, denial of service attack, which happens in a lot of healthcare, you're going to see it. You're going to see it in 6 to 12 weeks. You're going to see that data start to trade. And then, you know, there's a breach. Then their legal departments will get a hold of it. Like, what was it? Confluent. There was I have a ton of people calling me about a breach that happened in January of 2025. So I'm not blaming monolithic systems or institutional things or due process or anything. But this is why you need to take control in your own hands, because the amount of time that passes before you'll be alerted, I mean, it's like when my dog's taking a nap and somebody knocks at the door and they don't run to the door, and then all of a sudden they're all the way in the kitchen, and I look at my dog and be like, we're all dead right now if there's a burglar. Your reaction is, versus opening the cheese wrapper and then they're there in 2 seconds. You cannot leave this much time when you know something's breached. You need to react. You need to be proactive. You need to be quick. And you need to take care of those credentials. There's a lot of data about ransomware attack, but just look at it this way. First line of defense is, let's see if we can get money out of these guys. But whether they do or not, the marketplace is huge now. All right. There's organized crime everywhere, and there's just a lot more buyers. Iran is buying so much data. Everybody has their own reasons for buying data. Most of it is financial. You get some ideologues in there, but they're going to sell everywhere they can. Right. And there are huge marketplaces. I had someone referred to me to people, business people traveling to Spain. They were late for their meeting. They left their laptops and passports in the car, parked. Windows smashed, grabbed the laptops. Were they logged out of their Gmail and Google accounts? No. So they didn't even have to try to get admin access, because we all end our workday by just flipping the lid on our laptops. We stay logged into things. Number one danger. In 6 hours on our threat intel systems, we found their passports being traded on tour. Yeah. Now, so the thug on the street, all he needs now is some guy whispering, you can sell it, you can fence the electronics, but those things you got in their hand, you got those passports, people pay for those things. Go to this link and they'll pay for those numbers. So something that they might have not had the sense of what to do with before, there's somebody on a street corner will tell them how to sell it. So that's the real danger.
Yeah. And what is your response to when some of these data breaches happen and they say, well, we'll give you 1 year of free credit monitoring?
Okay. This is the fox in the hen house. Okay. Experian, Equifax, TransUnion all breached. TransUnion was the last one. Experian ruined LifeLock. That's how LifeLock got credentials stuffed and breached, because what they do is take all of your credit card information, your bank information. Don't give anybody all that stuff. You're just creating an attack surface. And then they query Experian databases to find out if who you're dealing with is creditworthy, or after the fact, if somebody has committed fraud. There is no prevention involved. Securing yourself, what I call putting your finances in witness protection, and not going to all these monitoring services that hackers love, by the way. They're just sitting there in that challenge accepted, okay? That's how LastPass got their source code stolen. You don't want to create attack surfaces. You want to reduce them. You harden what you're doing with secure encrypted email, with good practices, all right? We can have the VPN argument. I'm a big fan for several reasons. The number one being the telecommunications company not selling my data. Tone down your AI. Put a pin on your SIM on your phone. Guard your Apple ID and your Google accounts. Log out of things. You know, cybercrime is also the path of least resistance, okay? If
Sure
you
is.
walk into a mall and all the stores are open, all the personal vintage stores, and they're like, ooh, financial planner, accountant, like high net worth individuals. They all have their labels. And yours has the alarms and it has the steel door there and it has padlocks. You can be like, too much trouble. They're just going to go on
Yep.
to the next one. So you lock things down, but monitoring services create a lot of problems, honestly,
Yeah.
because it's just another surface. Monitoring services, gaming, pornography, dating, activism, crypto, and ancestry. Those to me are the 7 sins of attack surface, right?
Yeah.
And, you know, for dating people out there, there's a lot of single women my age, and we can teach them how to do it right. You know, you got to live your life. But just know that those are the hackers' favorite things, because they get downstream, they get their family, they get all kinds of things by doing that. And then they're very easy to breach.
Earlier you talked about your phone and how basically it is probably something that you need to be most concerned about. But what do I need to do to make it more secure?
Okay, so if you're not on an iPhone, okay, this is really simple. This is literally what hackers do to lock you out of your Apple account, okay? Apple will tell you they have a very secure architecture. That's nice, but this isn't a brick. If you have an email that I've made myself an admin to, it's what is your Apple ID, and I go to accounts.apple.com, and I have enough information to recover a password and reset it, and I can get the code and all of that. I can go and change your phone number and the email address associated with the Apple ID, and then lock you out with certain pins. You can call Apple and they won't be able to help you. Not even with what is the equivalent of a serial number on one of these things in IMEI. All right, so here's what you do. Go to settings. You're going to go down where your name shows up, your home screen of settings. Scroll down to screen time. Okay, click on it. Click on content and privacy restrictions. Turn it on. Scroll all the way down until you get to the last section saying allow changes to, and you'll see as a default that both the first two things, Face ID and passcode, and then accounts, is toggled on. Allow. Change it to don't allow. Go back out one screen to the home page of screen time. Scroll down to the bottom and add a pin to your screen time settings. This is what hackers do to lock you out of your phone. Now, remotely, no one can make changes to your account. They cannot hijack your account. All right. And this happens a lot. They would actually need your phone, but even if they had your phone and they punch you in the street and they put your face up to it or whatever and take it, they would still need that screen time pin to make any changes to your account. You would have the time to call Apple and lock it down. All right. This is a very simple thing you can do. The devil's in the details, but I promise you, if you are not scared of the settings on your phone, there is so much you can do to prevent this.
Why is that set up by default to be like that? Why wouldn't they set up a PIN? Is it do they claim it's for like a user experience if you're getting a new phone? Like what would be the reason why it wouldn't be set to more secure by default?
It's an excellent question. And I promise that people at companies don't love talking to me about this, even though I know a lot of their techs who do like to do it. So there are different reasons, because if you have an older phone, okay, pre-15, once you have this on, you'll notice your name is grayed out. It won't back up to the cloud. You have to go undo it and back it up manually. Okay, your iCloud, because it also protects your iCloud, where people take photos of things like their driver's license and their passports and their insurance cards. secure them. Please don't do that without protecting this first and use secure encrypted email to be your Apple ID. You see where we're going, you can guard it. So I think it's because of usability, but I don't know. You'd have to ask Apple. And also screen time, it's not even under privacy and security.
Right.
It's
Right.
associated
Yeah.
with parental controls. I don't know why they should. Okay, so here's the other part of your phone that's dangerous that we can protect. The most dangerous part of your phone, in many ways, is the telephony side. T-Mobile, AT&T, Verizon, and everyone they own, by the way, like Consumer Cellular's AT&T, Spectrum's a mobile operator for Verizon. Wherever you are, there's something called a SIM in your phone, Singular Identity Module. That's how the phone company knows it's you, and it governs two things on your phone: texting and calls. And texting, SIM swapping, is how people forward authorization codes to other phones, which is how they break into financial accounts. And then again, there's a no man's land. So if you have an iPhone up to iPhone 13, and I can give all these instructions for Android too. The Android, by the way, for the Apple ID, you have to protect your Google account, which is harder, by the way. So up to iPhone 13, you had a physical SIM card. Remember, people used to go to the airports and they'd swap out SIMs. Okay. So you go in, you go to your settings, you click on cellular, you go down to SIM pin, you click on it, and you put a lock on it. And the preset SIM pin for AT&T and Verizon and everything they own is 1111. And consumers don't know this, but hackers do. T-Mobile's 1234. Google Pixel, like there's a code. You go into that code, and then you change your PIN, okay? I can't even tell you how much safer this makes you. Have you ever seen it on an AT&T Verizon statement or bill to go do this?
Never once.
Google SIM swapping there at home, okay? This is a real problem because AT&T and Verizon were breached to the tune of more than 116 million people. And let me remind you that there are only 347 million people even in this country where they got access to these things. They had our socials, they had everything. So SIM swapping became really popular after that AT&T breach. They never tell you these things. And after that, you will also be able to protect eSIMs. So now eSIMs can have pins. For a while there, if you had already moved to eSIM, then you had to go put a pin like on your overall account, which your whole family shared. And that means your teenagers know. And that means it's not any good. This SIM is per phone. Every device has its own SIM. And now you can do it with that. I don't know why they don't tell you, because they should.
How does that affect if you are either social engineering or you have a collusive person at a kiosk at one of these mobile carriers and you say, hey, I'm Rivka and I lost my phone or I want to port it to this new number? Does making that change prevent that user or that employee from swapping the number over?
Yes. So if you lock yourself out, like if you forget this PIN, because this is super important, there are 2 times then you will need this PIN. Okay. One is when you turn your phone all the way off and you turn it on, it'll say SIM locked. Okay. On Droids too. And in Droids, it's the same process, by the way, because it's the telephony side. Then you put in your normal phone passcode and then it will ask for this 4-digit code. If you do not need it, you will need something that my industry affectionately calls the puke code, which is PUK. And it stands for personal unblocking, even though that acronym doesn't make sense. In the old SIM cards, when you went into a phone card, they took those plastic things off and they threw away the plastic part. That plastic part's what has your puke code on it. All right. Everyone, when you do this, you can call your carrier and say, I would like to just have my puke code for my records. It's a good thing for you to have. Every SIM, every eSIM has a personal unblocking code. You should be in possession of that. Because if you lock yourself out, you're going to need that. And the other time you'll need is when your iOS updates. Good morning, hello, you're now with, 26.4, blah, blah, blah. It will ask for that code. And what you're asking about, so I went undercover at several, this is what I do for fun. I went to T-Mobile, I went to Verizon stores, I went to AT&T, and I went to Spectrum in my area in the Hudson Valley to see who knew what. And it's alarming to me how much lack of knowledge they have. And even if you call their fraud departments, they're not very well trained. They should be hiring better people with more experience, right? Who know things, because with your SIM only at the same carrier, if I also have your email address, I can go and open another account and get a copy of that eSIM and create an entire world. And I had someone referred to me cleaned out of TD Bank, Bank of America, and Chase because of this. All right. They went, they used the phone, the eSIM, they found out codes and all kinds of things and where the banking was with the email. And it was a very bad linchpin to crime. To answer your question about these mobile carrier employees, they do have a lot of access. But if you lock your SIM pin, they don't know what the SIM pin is.
So they can't port the phone number over.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, they give you a new SIM. They can just kill it and give you a new eSIM. They could do that in your account. They have a lot of power. So here's the Secret Service and them looking at how, where the vulnerabilities are. They could definitely do that because all they have to do on their ends in the settings is deactivate the SIM.
Yeah. And really the goal is to try to protect, as you said, the SMS messages for the multi-factor authentication, two-step verification. So then therefore, if you get locked out, the bad guy doesn't have a new number. He doesn't have your number on another phone to be able to capture that and then reconstitute your account as something that they control. What about location services on phones?
So here's my lecture about that. So the third part of your phone that you have to protect is your IP address, and you do that with a VPN. Masks your IP. It's just basically dynamic IP, and it generates a fake one. And it's very good when you travel because you just pick the country, and then you don't look like an American tourist. You look like a local because IP addresses geolocate all the way back to where you have your internet service provider or your mobile carrier. Okay, so here we've protected your phone. Let's say I'm sitting at Starbucks. I've got my VPN on, I've got my Apple ID all jazzed up, I've got a PIN, but I have AirDrop on my iPhone, I have Bluetooth, and I have location services on. These are back doors when you have proximity, so within 30 yards. So in a dense urban environment, that's everywhere. In more suburban areas, you're sitting somewhere, and I can be in the parking lot, shoulder surf onto the Wi-Fi at Panera by just agreeing, and go and see whose phones are open, and most importantly, whose apps are open, because people don't log out of Venmo, which they should. All right, remember, log out. So there's a huge vulnerability if you have all those things, but you have location services on. In proximity, I can Bluetooth or location service in. Okay, so when you're not using those, turn them off. Particularly AirDrop, although you have to agree, but it depends on how much access they have. There's a little setting in AirDrop called Bring Devices Together. And if you're in the middle of texting and you don't realize it, you can agree to a swap that can take data from your phone. So those are close proximity things. If you're hiking in the middle of the mountains with location services on, you're probably all right. But if somebody gets into your account because it's not protected, then sure. And I have a hard time because I tell people who have 18-year-olds or college students who are traveling, and they're like, isn't this great? I can tell everywhere they are. I was like, yeah. But, 3 young girls walking around Europe somewhere, so can the bad guys. All they have to do is go into their phone and they can follow them. They can follow them back to the Airbnb. So I know it's hard because you have to trust your kids to say, can you please text me once a day and make sure you're all right? But that constant location is very dangerous. And I mentor 20-somethings, and I always tell them, here's your mantra when you're traveling. You don't have to put everything on social media in real time. You upload the pictures to the Eiffel Tower when you're already in Notre Dame, okay? Because cybercrime can turn into physical crime very, very easily. And they know how to spot people who are victims. The same goes to that 4 or 5-star hotel you're staying at. Cybercriminals aren't going to want people without money, all right? They sit at the airport. They know you're on public Wi-Fi. You have all of this stuff open the whole time, and they just follow you back. So it's especially important when you're traveling, but it's important in general to know that you can be seen in locations.
Would you suggest to say not only do you post your photos of the Eiffel Tower when you're at Notre Dame, but you post them when you're back home?
Yeah,
because
but
aren't you
dealing with a 20-year-old, you have to negotiate in reality.
Right.
You're going from people who literally document every moment of their lives in real time, which, we're all dinosaurs and things. I think one of the best things about being over 40 is that all the things we did were not documented in real time.
Yeah, oh my God, thank God. Thank the Lord.
I mean, really, it's much better that way. And I teach them, I was like, try to clean out those Facebooks, even though it's never really deleted, before you apply for jobs. Because people are hiring behavior, like, look at them on, they're not on Facebook anymore. They only use it for housing. Whatever people are on, like your Discords and your TikToks, be careful because they know. So it's very, very important to use it. Like I say, you've got to visualize in this world. Would you be in a bad neighborhood in New York City at 2 a.m. with this tourist with a map open? You wouldn't. You'd be like, oh,
Yeah.
in a dark alley, get me to a street light where there's some activity as fast as possible, hoodie on, head down running, so that I don't attract bad attention. What you look like with location services on is the tourist wearing gold jewelry, by the way. Let's make it worth dollar bills hanging out of your pocket with a map open. You are making yourself a visible target. And I think that's one of the hardest things for people to sort of lock into is that you are seen, because we don't think that we're seen if our cameras are off and they
Mhm.
can see you and they can track you. And that's the problem.
Yeah. So to summarize, if I'm somebody that is just now getting more security conscious, the three things that I want to do from our conversation today, primarily, and again, it's so you're not the lowest hanging fruit, you want them to move on to somebody else, is use an encrypted email communication service. The second would be use a VPN whenever you can. And most of them, you can set it up. And like I use one, and every time I go onto my phone, I don't have to do anything, basically. You could set it up to basically always be used. And then the third would be changing your settings in your phone to help protect your location, but more importantly, your SIM. So then therefore it limits the ability to be SIM swapped. If you do those three things.
And the Apple and the Google ID on your phone so that they can't go into your apps and do other things. Yes, you do those things. And one thing about the VPN, the little caveat there, is that sometimes you will have to pause it, specifically with sometimes it's insurance, sometimes it's
Yep.
medical, where they are geolocating you for various reasons technologically. And I mention healthcare because healthcare and insurance is always based on geolocated risk, right?
Yeah.
So you're not going to be able to do something unless they know you're of that thing. And you'll get errors like a 404 errors or something when you know your password doesn't work. You pause the VPN and magically you're in, because a VPN also blocks ads, trackers. It does all kinds of things. And most important, it prevents your mobile carrier or your internet service provider and your browser for knowing everywhere you log into, wrapping that up in a nice psychographic demographic profile with AI and selling it to advertisers. So it protects you from that. It protects you from being shopped out there because the laws aren't caught up yet and it's still opt out instead of opt in, and it's complicated to opt out. So it really, really protects you from that. It protects your data from being on the market, live and active on the market. And if you do those things, you go miles to protect yourself.
Do you agree that I used to tell people when they would say, oh, you work for the government, you know everything about us. I'm like, Nordstrom knows more about you than we do. Like advertisers, that's why they make so much money.
Yeah, it's expensive for governments to beacon on people and get past things. And, honestly, it needs reason. And there are old systems like, Social Security, right? Here's another thing that's very important to do. Social Security is a really old, rickety system, and rebuilding it and making it functional is a challenge, regardless of where your politics are. Just those things are challenging. When you are on a site like this, and here's the other part that you need to understand, it's not just your own behavior, but you have what used to be thought of as companies having. You have third-party risk. So if you log on to something aside from a bank, because the SEC, you're logged out really quickly due to inactivity, but not everything. You don't want to leave yourself open at Amazon. I have clients who don't know how to log out of Amazon, or your Venmo, and all your payments are public and you have people liking your payments. When those things are open and you remain open, if they're breached, what do you think the fraudster, the hacker, does first? They go look for every account that's open and easy to access. Second thing they do is go to auto-generated password database, because those have to be stored somewhere because they can't be repeated, and then just run them against accounts that exist. So you have to be careful to log out before you just X out and shut your computer or just swipe up on your phone. Log out of your apps. It's the most dangerous thing. And if you are at a government agency and you forget to log out, the best thing to do is go log back in and then log out. All right?
Mm-hmm.
You don't want yourself left open at the other end. You don't want that mall for bad people. Oops, I left for the evening and I forgot to lock my vintage store. And, maybe the theater's open 24/7 and people can walk down the hallways. You've got to really realize that you have third-party risk out there. And that's the other thing is you got to understand what's going on the other end. Okay. I
Absolutely.
promise you when TransUnion was breached, and I can tell which accounts were affected when I help people freeze their account and opt out of all the pre-approved marketing and all the other crap.
Mhm.
I do the rat on the food bar for your free credit score. Watch that
Yep.
fine print because anything that's free, you're their product. They will find a way to market you and sell your,
Yes.
okay, through Invis, their little brother, who's not beholden by the same laws. I don't mean to digress, but I can tell when someone was breached because they'll try to create an online account so we can freeze their credit reports and they'll be locked out and have to call because they were probably wide open when they were breached.
Yeah. Yeah. I started freezing my credit back in the old days when you had to pay every time. And
Yep.
that was maddening. So I think it was because of TransUnion or maybe Equifax. I don't
It was
remember
Equifax.
that they changed the laws. I do wish that there will be a time where you just had like basically one big button and you can just freeze and thaw them all at the same time and that everyone is frozen by default. Like, to me, that should be 2026. That should be the basic settings. But obviously, to your point, it's all about money and we are the product.
Your SIM should pin by default. You should get the phone and say, here's how you have to unlock these things, right? We have to shift because look, certain events happened, COVID burdened networks and hackers became way more sophisticated. All right. The AT&T and Verizon breaches were no little things. All right. There's a class action suit against AT&T. And in years to come, maybe they won't keep our social security numbers. The other thing that you can do that's very important to do, and my husband doesn't like to go to doctor's offices with me because I'll make a scene. Like we were in an orthopedic office. He had to get his knee fixed. And they're just sitting there because they don't want him. They have a little scanner thing. And they're like, instead of just signing in here and waiting for it to be called, just scan in your driver's license. So, of course, I went to the front of the line and I told people, do not do this. No. If they want your insurance card, let them call you by that. Why are you giving them another form when this industry, okay, I go to the World Trade Center for tabletops all the time, when they are the single industry that gets breached the most. Now you're going to have an ID and your insurance and your social security number. And when you're in a doctor's office and they have forms that they haven't reprinted in years and ask for your social security number, leave it blank. That's why you have an insurance card. You do not need your social security number ever. Okay, we can't change our social security number. So guard it like it was your kid. Okay?
Same with the driver's license number. Yeah. It's really hard to change.
It's very hard to change. And so you need to go by a rule of thumb. If they need to see your ID to verify your insurance card, here's a new behavior that will prevent you from being a victim. You can look at it to confirm, but I'm not transferring it to you. All right? And this is a very big difference. And it's where a lot of data security is going, where there's a meet in the middle, confirmation that it's true without transferring data. And when we get there infrastructurally, and you'll understand this from back end of Secret Service, we'll be in a lot safer place because we're constantly transferring data. Just say no. And if you get pushed back, fight it as much as you can. My husband's like, I know it's going to happen. We're going to get kicked out of this doctor's office and I won't get another weeks. So please. No. But I said, we'll sign our name, but I don't hand over your driver's license. I don't have my driver's license. I didn't drive here. Sorry.
Right.
Right.
There's no requirement to have one. Yeah.
Guard those because the deep fake and the cloning and all the biometrics, and don't automate your voice anywhere. It's not there yet.
Right. Well, also, are you concerned about, and I promise this is the last question because I've taken up way so much of your time, but it's fascinating. So are you concerned because all of our information is so widely available, meaning not our information, but our voice and our likeness and things like that in 5 years, how hard will it be to even know who you're talking to?
So certain brokerage firms like Fidelity wanted to be secure so you could have this automated voice to, bypass your password. And, here I go again down to the World Trade Center and the CIA comes in and I'm like, the deep fakes are so much ahead. And I always tell people, when you get scam phone calls and you want to get on there and yell at them, don't. In 3 seconds, no matter what you say, it used to be they'd try to get you to say your name and the word yes and the word I agree. Doesn't even matter anymore. They can create entire syntax, your voice, all kinds of things in so little time. In fact, I tell people, when you record your voicemail on your phone, don't use your own voice. And just, again, act like my daughter, don't pick up the phone when I call. If you don't know the number, don't pick up. It'll go to voicemail. This is why kids are so safe, right? So just don't give your voice away. And if you have automated voice password bypass entry to a financial account, stop listening to this, call them up and remove it.
What about the concern, though, that so many of us have our social media or YouTube or whatever, like it's not very difficult to find somebody's voice anymore
Yep.
because we've already been giving it away for generations or a generation.
Yes. So what you want to make sure of is that your voice does not enable any entry. So when you have a vulnerability, okay, remember, it's put your finances in witness protection. I have rules on file with my bank and brokerage that no automated voice, that certain things only happen in branch. For example, wires, because banks aren't legally liable for wire fraud. That can't happen unless I'm in branch. I have an encrypted email. I've set up every fraud alert in my bank. By the way, do that. Just ticking on foreign transaction alert can help save from so much. It'll just alert you. Now, here's a test. Here's how you know if your fraud alerts are on. If you go buy that Proton mail, that's in Switzerland. You should not be able to put your credit card in there without Chase or Bank of America saying, "Is this you?" This is an international transaction. And I know immediately when I work at a client, I said, that just went through and they didn't even warn you. You need to go into your settings and here's what you need to do. And there's a greater benefit when you fire up all the fraud alerts. Okay, Chase has been hit a lot. They have great fraud alerts now. When you fire those up, there's a total that's better than the sum of the parts. They're watching you. Their algorithms are on alert for your account altogether. So you want to make sure you have no automated voice. There's no automated voice that can get you into my accounts, right? You have an encrypted email. You know, the secure portals you go on for your banking, that protects the bank from you. Okay. When you actually have a secure email, when you get those e-statements, it's end-to-end encrypted. Proton will know if the recipient is encrypted, and it will make end-to-end encryption. If it's not encrypted, you can still email your friend at a Gmail, and it will decrypt. Okay? So you have that. You have your two-factor. Whenever available, use two-factor to an authentication app. It doesn't use SIM technology, all right? My ilk is fighting hard to make it under Reg E, which governs bank fraud rules, that they have to use authentication apps and not just phone. ID Me, that gets you into government agencies, had some issues, and now they have an ID Me authenticator app. You cannot use Google Authenticator anymore. Because it's too vulnerable, right? And so all of those things, put pins on where available and things like that. So that when they do have a piece, because you're right, I can't protect. That is toothpaste out of the tube. So here's the mantra, right? I can't prevent this. So I'm going to make it unable to lead to anything financial of mine. Okay? So that can't be used for targeting me because that's the only option I have. It has to be no longer applicable because otherwise it can be leveraged to target me. That's what social engineering is. That's all it is. And the number one way they get in is account recovery. Hi, this is Matt. Here's my social. Here's my email. I got locked out. Can you send me a code? Meanwhile, they're sitting on a computer in Pakistan.
Yeah.
What I'm trying to say, it's not individual. I'm just using it as an example because who was cleaned out from the SIM was the people who were in a casino in Pakistan. Yeah, you can send me a code. Okay, great. There it is. You don't even know you got a code because they've configured your caller ID to go to them. All right. That is the number one way they get in. The number one way they funnel out is wire or bill pay. Yeah. Okay. Or Zelle. That's why the Attorney General of New York last fall sued Bank of America for the second time for lack of consumer asset protection for Zelle. And Citibank, she sued right before them. So now they're on alert and they're making changes, but the law is just further behind the criminal ability. So you sort of have to take an inventory and say, this is everything I can't change that's vulnerable. So how do I make it so that doesn't lead to, my assets? And that's it. That's the whole method.
Well, you've given us a lot to think about. And so we are very grateful for your time. And if somebody's like, oh my gosh, what did she say? Look in the notes. We're going to put all the information in there. So then therefore you can go, and especially as it relates to the SIMs and all that other kind of stuff. So Rivka, thank you so much for your time. And I really appreciate what you continue to do to help protect people.
Well, thank you. And thank you for having me on. I really enjoyed it. And thank you for your service with the Secret Service. That is a tough job.
Thank you. Yeah, no, thank you so much. And thank you, listeners, for this week's episode of Detonation Point presented by Elastio. We'll see you next week. Thank you.